Talking about music on YouTube is really hard, so this video is way better over on my sponsor, Nebula. Click the link in the description to get an annual subscription for a discount and watch this video the way it was meant to be seen. This video was also brought to you by my Patreon patrons, with an extra special thank you to Andreas Evans, Cassandra Barker, Eruditorum, Ilona Concetta, Jimbo, Michelle, Patrick Behringer, Susan Jones, and Russell Thomas. Hot take, the end credits are the best part of Insidious: The Red Door. I may be somewhat biased, since this was my first viewing of the Insidious franchise at all. A friend invited me, and I was like, you know what? Sure, why not? Despite knowing absolutely nothing about it, except that it features this spooky-looking dude with a red face, and is notorious for kinda cheap scares.
Those movies are what I like to call spooky face movies, because the thing that scares you is always just a spooky face popping out and going booga booga.
I was 100% confident Ethan Hawke was in it. I was wrong. That's the other long-running Blumhouse franchise with a single-word title that's basically a synonym for evil. I admit that this may not have been the optimal viewing condition and is entirely a me problem. But, you know, as far as places to jump in, I'd say it actually wasn't too bad. It was pretty easy to pick up on any important stuff I'd missed just based on vibes. I mostly had a good time. The first act was like everything I'd been led to expect from this franchise and was not particularly for me. The second started to move its way into my preferred realm of trash horror. The third absolutely whipped, and it was still only a hint of what was to come. Behold, the precise moment that your humble host, standing at the edge of a rabbit hole she'd been peering down for months, got knocked ass over tea kettle all the way down. I will explain, but first, context. It is not surprising to me, or to anyone with a fucking brain, that in 2023 we get tie-in singles for shit like Barbie and every animated kids movie. It is disappointing to me, and to anyone with a fucking soul, that in 2023 those tie-in singles that aren't musical numbers from musical films are mostly about picking a pop artist and letting their existence do the entirety of the work. Dance the Night is just a Dua Lipa single. It's not like I don't appreciate a Dua Lipa single, but throwing that out there and calling it a day is a big fucking bummer. I want Speed by Billy Idol, parentheses from the movie Speed. I want a motherfucking bat dance. And quietly, unobtrusively, off in a corner of the very much not prestige horror sequel universe, one band has begun reviving that shit like an undead anti-pope with a penchant for the tenor saxophone. That'll make sense in a minute, I promise. Ghost is a Swedish arena pop metal band? Casey Explosion described them as spooky ABBA, and I cannot argue with that. My brother-in-law describes them as what happens when theater kids who like 80s hair metal can actually play, which is just factually correct. I have no idea what actual after-school activities any of these actual humans may or may not have actually participated in during high school, but there simply is no jock explanation for this. It was not born of the studio art program, nor of the debate team. My official metalhead consultant for this video called them what would happen if you threw Kiss and Slipknot at each other in the Large Hadron Collider, and I don't have the expertise to evaluate that, but it sure sounds good. All of which is to say, what genre is Ghost is very much up for interpretation. YouTube and Spotify and the Grammys all straightforwardly classify them as metal, but they've got a sound that tends to lead a lot of people who aren't particularly into metal to feel like it's not metal, and a certain subset of metalheads to really enjoy arguing about whether or not it's metal, which from what I understand is basically the single most definitive sign that it absolutely is metal.
I thought this was gonna be metal. I don't know why I assumed it was metal.
Already not as heavy as I expected.
I was expecting metal, it's acoustic at the beginning.
There's a not at all unfounded expectation that a band who looks the fuck like this is gonna produce a pretty intensely brutal sound, is gonna incorporate a decent amount of harsh vocals. And that expectation is rather strongly at odds with the extremely clean, highly polished, much more pop-influenced belt frontman Tobias Forge brings to the table, backed up by Black Sabbath-ass tritone riffs. You cannot hide in the darkness. Just as often as 80s core synths and 4-part harmonies and deaf literal leopards. It's the cruel beast that you feed, it's your burning, yearning need to bleed. There is a saxophone solo with plot significance it fucking owns. It is a kind of accessible that is relatively uncommon for the genre, but I'd like to suggest that if you find yourself agreeing with any of the authority-claiming internet's assessments that compliment Tobias Forge by insulting metal, if you think you don't like metal, but you have been liking what you're hearing in this video so far, you probably actually do like metal. Ghost is an excellent gateway drug. Start with Impera, you'll like it. If you're a metalhead who just enjoys arguing, I certainly won't stand in the way of your bliss. But to the extent that genre is culture, at least as much as it is artistic convention, Ghost is metal to the goddamn tibia. High concept aesthetic bullshit with the tongue surgically attached to the cheek. In the realm of bits and the commitment thereof, Ghost is a Hall of Famer. The shtick is that they're like the Catholic Church, but for the devil, which doesn't sound all that innovative in the realm of shock rock. Futzing around with inverted crosses and choral backing vocals in the name of Satan is nothing that hasn't been done before, but Ghost has got lore, and it is all about internal politics. Forge portrays Papa, aka the Satanic Pope, aka the Anti-Pope, in numerous iterations over the course of the succession drama that has gone on since the band's inception. So I'm pretty new to this fandom, and no, I didn't get into them when Mariana Cross blew up on TikTok. Do I look like I'm cool enough to get into anything via TikTok?
Well, I've heard, that my songs are trending on TikTok.
No. Obviously, I got into them when my friend gave a presentation about them at a PowerPoint party detailing the state of the lore, and I instantly forgot all of it, but I did listen to the music, and it did own, and it did become the cornerstone of my running playlist. And then Insidious the Red Door happened to me, and I spent 6 whole days doing nothing but watching bootleg concert clips and fan cams and TikTok compilations, and lore explainers with AI voices set to the Wii shopping channel music for reasons I am not hip enough to understand, and I definitely can't call myself anything close to the internet's greatest expert, but fortunately, nobody can stop me from declaring myself a preeminent Ghost (Swedish band understander. And if you would like to quibble, the comments section is down there. Thank you in advance for the engagement. The rest of you, sit your asses down and let me tell you a tale. So there's a shadowy group called the Clergy, or maybe the Ministry, or maybe those are both descriptive rather than titular, but in any case, they created the project Ghost as a missionary arm to spread the bad news of Satan and destroy Christian churches and stuff, led by Papa Emeritus I for the band's first album Opus Eponymous. As far as I can tell, any intel about Papa 1 beyond he's the anti-pope, this is the first you're hearing of that idea, what more do you want, could only have been gleaned by being a Ghost fan before about 2012, and the rest of us are shit out of luck. He passes the torch to Papa Emeritus II for Infestissimum, where we start to get a bit more clear character with a breadcrumb trail. He's a party boy who is here not only for the rock and roll, but also for the sex and the drugs, and especially the sex as chronicled in the brief mockumentary web series Propaganda. He steps down in favor of his brother Papa Emeritus III, or rather gets pushed out, because this is when we meet Sister Imperator.
Papa too has been let go.
She is the leader of the Clergy, who's been pulling the strings behind the scenes, and makes a point of saying that the new guy is a full 3 months younger than Papa 2 for some beautiful reason. So Papa 3 takes over for the band's 3rd album, Meliora. Bisexual icon, sex-positive feminist ally, Grammy winner, utter disaster, my son the beloved with whom I am well pleased.
You want to see something funny? I have a hole in my shoe right there.
I wasn't actually around for any of this, but my honest impression from the future is that up to this point, this was a fun bit. No huge deal, whatever. At first it was a way for the band to remain anonymous, which has its perks. There's not a whole lot more than that going on so far. It's kinda funny to take a super buttoned-down man of the anti-cloth and put him in a Vegas rock star suite. The end. That's the rails, okay? They're over here. We have been on them. This is where we're going, buckle up. So at the end of the Meliora era, the Clergy decide they aren't happy with anybody's efforts in furthering their mission so far, so they drag Papa Emeritus III off stage very dramatically, and in comes this motherfucker!
You can strut around with that sexy tank of oxygen.
This is Papa Niall, aka Papa Emeritus Zero, and he rolls up like 1, I am all of these guys' dad, 2, Sister Imperator is the love of my life and probably at least one of these previous Papa's mom, and by the way, is about to help me kill all 3 of them for being giant disappointments. 3, this band has actually been around since I used to front it back in the 1960s, here have a 50th anniversary edition EP, and 4, here is my right-hand man Cardinal Copia, who is here to front the band because Sister Imperator said so, but I am not happy about it, and we are about to begin an embittered and extremely fucking goofy power struggle. Welcome to the prequel era! Thank you for joining us! This is also, incidentally, where we start getting a very clear chronicle of the lore through an ongoing web series called Chapters. Papa Niall wants another shot at the spotlight, but Sister Imperator thinks Cardinal Copia, who isn't part of the Papa Emeritus lineage, is exactly the fresh blood the project needs. Copia is also just the world's biggest dork. His preferred method of conveyance is a tricycle, because Chapter 7 is a spoof of The Shining, where Copia stands in for Danny, and then everybody just properly committed to it, and that is most of what you need to know to get his whole thing.
Sorry about that, Papa.
This era of the band is basically just a bunch of massive fucking theater kids fronting the project with their mecha theater kid creation.
I've had it with these motherfucking snakes on this plane.
12 out of 10, we've gone too deep, I would simply die for him. After a lot of passive-aggressive infighting, Papa Niall finally dies on stage. I promised you a sax solo with plot significance. Cardinal Copia is inaugurated as Papa Emeritus IV, and so begins the Imperator era. Papa Niall's ghost is still around, Sister Imperator can't bring herself to call Papa for Papa, an empty coffin is sitting ominously around the ministry offices, and Papa 4 has progressed to the level of getting a stagehand to bring him a fresh pair of shoes in the middle of a show.
I have a hole in my shoe right there.
And as of the time of recording, that's where we are. Following the pattern and also some hints dropped in chapters, it seems like it's about time for some shit to go down.
The shows are scheduled. I know when your time is up.
I was not the only one who was expecting a canon event at the LA stop on their recent US Re-Impera tour. There was a no phones policy and everything. There was a lot of monologuing about life's ups and downs and how all things must come to an end. But for the time being, we are still living in Papa 4's world.
I know a lot of people are expecting some sort of explosion, an implosion, some miracle. And I just disappeared. In favor of a successor. But you know what? This finale, it's just gonna be my last show.
And you understand everything important now.
There's a song that my papa used to sing, actually.
I doubt that his dad used to sing this, but maybe I'm wrong.
That's funny on multiple levels. I can appreciate at least 5 of them. There's my fan cred.
My father was Papa. His father. His father's father. His father's father's father. His father's 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 father. His father.
Feels like this band has a cult following.
Proud of it, babe.
I will be honest, this level of lore is the kind of thing I appreciate immensely in concept, but generally just cannot be bothered to keep up with in practice. This will probably come as a surprise to many of you given my apparent choice of career path, but if a particular kind of fun requires homework, I am never ever actually going to do it. That's literally the only reason I don't play Dungeons and Dragons. Look at me. It makes no sense that I do not play Dungeons and Dragons. I am just too lazy to write a fucking character sheet. I enjoy fun homework, but I like to do it on my own terms. Nothing will make me nope out faster than someone telling me I have to do it, unless that person is me deciding to write a video essay. I think I am about as caught up as I'm going to be at this point. I know who Father Jim DeFrock is, and I did obnoxiously insert myself to explain that to a guy who got dragged to a ritual by his son and didn't understand why there were so many people there dressed as Jesus. But as a person who earlier this year walked into just a massive backlog to dig my way out of, I deeply appreciate that, much like the Insidious franchise, apparently, you can pretty much just pop into Ghost whenever a friend introduces you with no additional context, and you will basically be fine. The music is fun as shit, whether or not you have any sort of context for which Papa is singing or what the ever-loving fuck that even means. That said, I listened to the band in the first place because someone explained the lore to me, and it was obviously extremely my shit, even if I kind of knew that I couldn't be bothered to actually keep up with it without making an entire proper project out of it. And even if you, like the naive me of 2 months ago, think you can't quite be bothered to follow it, it's still very much woven into the music. Not so much in terms of like the lyrical content, although there's certainly some of that, but more in terms of stylistic choices. Like, remember when I said that a lot of people have a hard time reconciling the band's obviously metal aesthetic with Forge's more poppy vocals? Well, that right there is a huge character moment. There's a more detached kind of power to this sort of performance that is pretty darn high church, honestly.
It is very meet, right, and our bounden duty that we should at all times and in all places give thanks unto thee, O Lord.
Harsh and clean vocals both require their own kinds of hard work, but this kind of squeaky cleanliness evokes an effortless aesthetic that communicates that Papa Emeritus, of any iteration, is one who incites others to thrash, not one who thrashes himself. He is going to stand here and be extremely cool, and he doesn't need to do anything more than that to make you lose your shit. Maybe a few pelvic thrusts just for shits and giggles. It's a vocal performance that sounds like a dude standing there looking cool while everyone else loses their shit around him, but also works just great with these incongruously dorky dance moves that somehow still come out looking effortlessly cool. It's very much baked into the music. There's another thing that feels worth mentioning about what this lore sort of enables, which is... Okay, so look at this motherfucker. All of him. Look at him in the eyes on his face, and tell me, with the mouth on your face, that you don't know exactly what is happening on Tumblr. It took me precisely 2 seconds to find softcore incest porn, and I wasn't even sort of looking for smut. I was literally just trying to figure out whether or not it's actually Tobias Forge playing Papa 2 in Propaganda. I have been made to read the deeply unholy phrase, "Fuck you calling me Papa like it doesn't turn you on just to say it." That one's on me, I got curious. This shit, Taylor fucking made. The extremely online femmes have made entire 5-course meals out of 1/4% of this energy.
His movements and the suaveness of it reminds me of Jack Skellington somehow.
I swear I'm not trying to pick on this woman. She is good at her job. It's just so useful to have the perspective of someone standing on solid ground and peering down the rabbit hole when I'm stuck all the way at the bottom, you know? Look, I'm just saying, there is a difference between an animated character who is definitely inside your TV and not getting out, and a set of characters portrayed exclusively by one specific flesh and blood adult man who sometimes does occupy the same physical space as his fans, including the ones who are young and pretty and extremely online. Especially because, while Ghost is a band with like 6 shit million performers, it is also such an auteur situation that it has literally been ruled to be so in court. Ghost is Papa and the Nameless Ghouls, and it is Tobias Forge and the people whose paychecks he signs.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Ghoul! Give it up for Ghoul! Ghoul! Give it up for Ghoul! 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 Ghoul!
And ever since my last time falling down an auteur-driven goth theater kid internet rabbit hole...
Who do lost and highly sheltered young girls turn to?
Not to mention some recent reassessment of the goth theater kid rock stars of my youth.
If I see you after the show, I'm gonna fuck you. And I don't care if you want it. I more care if you don't want it.
I feel justified saying this sets me ever the slightest bit on edge. There was a running bit in the Popestar tour, fronted by Papa 3, where he would give this long monologue before the final song of the set, Monstrance Clock, basically amounting to a series of instructions for how to interpret this line.
Maybe not on the first date. It doesn't always work directly, so don't have too fucking high hopes, right?
Theater kid shit. Actually, you know what? That's marching band shit. We as a society don't talk enough about the extent of that overlap, but they are distinct energies. Anyway, the beginning of this monologue is delivered to a woman in the audience who cops to this being her first show.
This is your first time? Oh. Well. How do you like it so far?
And it can be kind of a lot.
You know, in a way, we are already fucking each other, you know? I'm fucking all of y'all here. See that.
But there is a playful kind of safety here. A large piece of that is, of course, to do with the underlying attitude being communicated here. There's a power dynamic inherent to most rockstar fan fantasies. The experience is supposed to be exciting for the fan because the star is so awesome, and for the star because the fan's obsession confirms how awesome they are. And while this dynamic doesn't not exist for Ghost, the uncrossed line of this performance not coming off as creepy does sort of rely on the assumption that a person who is in the very front of the pit at one of their shows is almost certainly not operating with the same boundaries they'd have with even a charming stranger. The fantasy they are presenting is one that is explicitly mutual, that is about communication and shared pleasure.
The most important thing is that you both work for a common goal. So you have to thrust and counter thrust and do it together. Like a tango that takes two.
It is suave and alluring and full of swagger, but first and foremost, it is fun and not a little bit silly.
Maybe, just maybe, they can both come, and maybe even at the same time. So that they can both be happy, yes.
Even more so recently with Copia's particularly off-the-wall brand of horniness.
That's a good bite in the ass. I would like to bite your asses.
The message is not, I can do whatever I want and you'll let me because you're already obsessed with me, as is subtext or even just text in so many of these performative would-be seductions. It's, I'd like to. Oh, you'd like to too? Well then yes, let's.
I'm dancing. We're throwing kisses. I'm trying to impress you. And I'm wiggling my hips.
It's more or less how this is supposed to go if it were real. When there are jokes, they are actually jokes.
Had not been for the fact that I also have to leave, I would have lined you up all out in the park and I would have fucked all of y'all. One after one. But unfortunately, I don't have time, and it's probably illegal.
But equally important is that this is so blatantly a performance. At the end of the show, Papa will cease to exist, or will return to the ether where fictional characters wait when their stories are not being told. This man will leave the stadium with a different accent than the one he affects on stage. The mask will come off, and we won't be there to see what's behind it. There's an extent to which this was maybe more obvious for the first 10 or so years of the band's history, during which Forge was fully anonymous, doing the band's publicity as a masked character called Special Ghoul. But for my money, the effect has actually become more pronounced since his name was made public in that 2017 lawsuit that established that, legally speaking, he more or less is Ghost, and he started taking interviews as himself. It is never more clear that Papa does not really exist than when the man who portrays him drops character.
Cerise, I still have like the first recording of that, which is me. I'm just swinging my son or my daughter in a playground, and then yeah, I just hear no, that's the rats.
And for a whole lot of people, maybe counterintuitively, this makes the character all that much more compelling. In a 2018 interview with Revolver, one of the first given under his own name, Forge said,
"Usually you have a band and you have 4 or 5 members who are posting photos of everything that they're doing, and that combined creates this public image of the band. And since that was obviously an absolute no-no with Ghost, still is, and we were overcompensating with an image, people started focusing on the image instead. And I guess they were appreciating the fact that we were creating this forum in which they could, in a slightly old school way, imagine things.
And from my experience of the fan culture around the band, he's right. Like, when Forge, as Cardinal Copia on the album Prequel, sings, "Many a rat I've befriended," there's layers, right? There's the album's overarching motif about the Black Death and the rats that carried it, as metaphor for personal betrayal and oppressive forces more broadly, and as impetus to ponder mortality and legacy. There's the fact that this was the band's first album after that court case that was, from Forge's point of view, a group of people he had considered friends and collaborators trying to claim ownership and wrest control of a thing he saw as his creation. But when you ask the most committed and enthusiastic fans, I mean, it's not like they don't hear those parts or hold them in their head, but also, good luck finding a single fic written post-2018 with any amount of plot or world building that doesn't make mention of the many literal rats Copia has literally befriended and keeps as pets, imagining things in a slightly old school way. And so, this bracingly intimate moment, while it is so clearly rockstar shit, takes on a subtly different meaning. It is an explicit invitation to play pretend, to participate in a fiction that everyone involved knows beyond a doubt will evaporate when the band leaves the stage and the lights come on.
Looking myself in the mirror, like I don't see the rock star. I don't see Ghost when I see myself in the mirror.
It puts up a wall between this fantasy Forge is helping to craft for and with his audience, and anything he might have a chance to insinuate about where or with whom he'll be spending the rest of the night.
I think I know who you're talking about. I will tell him. I know some peoples who know his peoples, and I will tell him that you sang very nicely to him.
Which is certainly not to say that Tobias Forge or any other rock star with this kind of highly theatrical persona doesn't have power they could exploit over their fans, or that there won't still be fans who act like inappropriate creeps, or even that plenty of rock stars who don't inhabit this kind of explicitly over-the-top character aren't performing just as much of a fictional persona on stage. But it is to say that a fic about performing a ritual with Terzo in a dark hall of the ministry to the sound of the monstrance clock is meaningfully different from one about meeting Brendan Urie in his dressing room after a Panic at the Disco show. That it does not feel the same to watch Terence Zdunich insinuate that a fan at a Q&A likes his singing voice because she uses her speaker as a vibrator.
I think someone's been sitting on the speakers when I hit those low notes.
As it does to watch Papa 3 give one woman in the pit this extended Rocky Horror Virgin eye fucking.
We've been toe flirting, maybe. If I could, I would toe flirt you.
It's less like your boss, who's super hot, and of course you've thought about it, but is still, your boss making a comment about the cut of your shirt that you're pretty sure is a poorly thought out attempt at a jokey compliment, but you're kinda too scared to ask for fear of finding out that it's not, and more like your friend who's in a monogamous relationship, and who knows that you're in a monogamous relationship, but you still kind of flirt with each other because flirting is fun, and your relationship with your partner is such that it doesn't cross any lines, and if anyone else said those kinds of things to you, you'd probably have to worry about whether it was an overture to something that you'd have to nip in the bud, but you know this friend well enough to feel totally comfortable that flirting is all it's ever going to be. Is that relatable?
I'll tell you what. Why don't you take the matter in your own hands? You want to do that? You can think of me if you want to. I sure as shit will think of you.
But the single most important thing about the extended fiction surrounding the band Ghost is that it's extremely indicative that they will be down to do this shit. Okay, so let me break it down for you. This is a tie-in single for a movie that is about a kid trying to escape a spooky spirit realm full of spooky demons, the main one of which looks like this, and here we have a voice that fans will immediately associate with a spooky guy who looks like this, singing, "You better hope and pray that you'll make it safe." I wish I could get a message to my 15-year-old self and just be like, the Goths are your friends. They are just fellow nerds in different costumes. You are actually exactly the right level of cool to shop at Hot Topic. Black lipstick looks great on you. And just when you think we've gone as deep as we're gonna go, they kick it up like 16 notches. That is the voice of motherfucking Patrick Wilson, director and star of the movie, who plays the kid's dad who helps him escape the spooky ghost world, with his voice calling out to his son over and above the voice of the spooky demon. Theater kid shit, theater kid shit, theater kid shit, inject it directly into my veins. This song is a cover. They found it like that. The original, by Shakespeare's sister, also features two voices who are fighting over the soul of, I don't know, some guy. But Ghost makes this really interesting choice where instead of maintaining that original breakdown where the two voices each sing one verse,
if this world is wearing thin and you're thinking of escape, you'd better hope and pray that you make it safe back to your own world.
Forge takes both, and Wilson doesn't come in until the final chorus. It really brings out these sinister undertones that are already there in the lyrics of the first verse.
When your pride is on the floor, I'll make you beg for mine.
And it also better fits the story of the movie, where this kid has a pretty strained relationship with his dad at the beginning.
I snagged this for you. You should check it out. If you hate it, no worries, but you're not gonna hate it.
You really don't know me, do you? I mean, you really think I want to join a frat?
Which leaves the Insidious : The Red Door open for him to get caught up in these cool astral projecting skills he mysteriously seems to have that give the spooky demon the chance to yoink him. And it's only at the end that his dad comes through for him and saves him and starts the process of healing their relationship. And then when Wilson's voice comes in on that sort of counter melody, Forge holds down the main melody that's relegated to these soft backing vocals in the original. So you get this very clear story of these two opposing meanings of stay with me. The demon wants the kid to stay trapped in spooky ghost world, and the kid's dad wants him to stay focused on his presence as he leads him out. Ghost is a band that does a lot of covers, and I think they're really incredible at making just a few of these seemingly minor changes that just completely recontextualize the whole story. Theater kid shit. But this time, I mean that in the most earnest way possible. Anyway, while we're on this Shakespeare's Sister music video, the main plot of one of the Insidious movies I haven't seen, but that does get referenced in The Red Door, is that this kid's consciousness was trapped in spooky ghost world, leaving his body in a coma. And I don't actually know if Patrick Wilson spends any of that movie holding his son's hand and saying, "Stay with me." I'm just saying, there's layers to this on-the-noseness, compiling a nose as large as Papa Four's new one. It is a work of art. The thing is, in my opinion, this is only the second best 2020s horror sequel tie-in single recorded by Swedish arena pop metal spooky ABBA band Ghost. That fucking face melter is the single best part of 2021's Halloween Kills.
It's a hunter's moon.
Okay, we're doing theater kid bullshit, so I guess we should talk about lyrics. In this era of Halloween sequels, we're going with killer Michael Myers and final girl Laurie Strode locked in like an eternal battle. He's obsessed with her specifically for some reason. She's the only one who can kill him for some reason. This has been a big trend of this horror like a sequel era we're living through, and to be honest, I don't particularly love it.
This is your life now, which means that whoever this is gonna keep coming for you. And I won't sleep until he's in the ground.
But you know what? I like it when Ghost sings it to me. And like, yes, depending on where you're drawing your lines around the massive clusterfuck that is the continuity of the Halloween franchise, Laurie might literally be Michael's sister. We see what you did there, Tobias. You're very clever.
So I wanted the lyrics to be sort of nostalgic, longing back, but also semi-romantic, and also have a slight sort of siblings love, friendship love, question mark.
Do you see what I mean about him very obviously not being Papa? But where this particular song gets really interesting is in the music itself, and in the music it is responding to. I made a whole video on John Carpenter's theme for Halloween, and I'm not gonna rehash it all here, but to sum up, it is famously in the time signature 5/4, meaning the basic unit of rhythm is made up of 5 beats, which is uncommon in Western music where you usually see groups of 4 or sometimes 3. So in order to make time signatures that aren't divisible by 3 or 4 work in this musical tradition, in order to make that kind of music something you can groove on, that you can feel in your bones and move your body to without having to actively count in your head the whole time, you'll usually see them broken down into sub-beats and then split into groups of 2 or 3 that feel like a short beat or a long beat. I like to represent them as a slash and a triangle.
Don't be intimidated by music theory, it's just names for noises you already know.
The Halloween theme uses a very consistent 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, or long, long, short, short, or triangle, triangle, slash, slash pattern that kind of disguises it as a weird 4/4, mirroring the movie's story about a spooky force sneaking its way into seemingly safe suburban homes. So, Hunter's Moon. The verse starts in 4/4 with all of the subbeats in groups of 2, or short beats, or slashes, which feels like the absolute default normal to those of us who grew up with that being what most of our music sounded like.
It's been a long time coming, I'm coming back for you, my friend.
The second half of the verse is still in 4, but we start to get these syncopated groupings of 3, or long beats or triangles, in the melody that aren't too far out of the ordinary, but knowing where we're headed, begin to signal that something is a little off. It may not even be weird enough that you really notice it if you're not paying attention, but it is just that hair off kilter in a way that's laying crucial groundwork for what follows. Because then we get this chorus riff.
It's a hunter's moon.
Okay, so number 1, this is just rad as all hell. Number 2, let's break it down. We've got this vocal lead-in where the whole band drops out for just long enough to kind of reorient the rhythm, and then we get 2 really strong drum beats at the end of the measure, aligning with the word hunters.
It's a hunter's moon.
That's important because those last 2 beats could be the end of a normal bar of 4, like we were hearing in parts of the verse,
It's been a long time.
or of a long, long, short, short bar of 5, like in the Carpenter Halloween theme. Which is, of course, relevant because this is a tie-in single for a sequel to John Carpenter's Halloween. And right here, it starts to incorporate that iconic rhythmic pattern. But we only get that for 1 bar before going back into 4, where instead of that normal grouping of 4 short beats, we get that syncopated long, long, short pattern that was introduced in the verse, and that in this context almost feels like weird 3. What it feels like is like it's supposed to be that long, long, short, short, weird 4 that's actually 5, like the bar before it, and 1 beat got dropped. Incidentally, this was my main conclusion about the original John Carpenter theme when I analyzed it a couple years ago. It feels like it should have one more beat to put it in this alternating 6/8 feel you see in something like America from West Side Story.
Life can be bright in America
if you can fight in America.
And in this riff, Ghost destabilizes us one step further by alternating that pattern that already kind of feels like it's missing something with a pattern that feels like it's missing even more. It redefines normal so thoroughly that the part that's supposed to feel normal feels like the part that's out of place. Okay, so at this point it's worth mentioning that this song was released both as a tie-in single for Halloween Kills and as a track on Ghost's 2022 album Imperator, and the two versions are actually pretty different. The album version features the lead guitar much more prominently, while the film version has it overshadowed by this much more John Carpenter-y keyboard. Forge's vocals on the title drop are significantly cleaner in the film version, in a way that sort of mirrors the pitch specificity of the synths in Carpenter's original melody, and sets the band up to really drive home that connection in the riff that follows.
It's a hunter's move. It's a hunter's move.
In the first iteration of that chorus riff in the film version, the guitar line is dropped entirely, stepping the Carpenter-inspired keyboard line up from counter melody to melody. The second and final iterations bring in that guitar melody from the album version with a new synth tone that almost sounds like a human scream, and it also drags pretty significantly behind the beat, like we're hearing one of Michael's soon-to-be victims who's not quite fast enough to outrun him. In the last iteration, this gets interrupted by 1 bar of 5 from the rhythm section, keys, and drums, and a chanting voice, before the riff comes back with the keyboard absolutely wailing in perfect time with the rest of the band, including a lower harmony line. To me, this is the sound of the Strode women teaming up to do their final girl shit, which is the hallmark of this whole Lega sequel trilogy. Right when things look really bad for any of them, we're reminded that they're not alone and they have each other's backs. I mean, except for the very end of Halloween Kills specifically, that one gets extra dark, but there is a great saving moment first, and Hunter's Moon does end on a pretty ominous, unresolved tag, so I think it still works. The two versions of the song diverge pretty significantly in the bridge section, but rhythmically they're more or less the same, and that's what I want to focus on. The album version gives us 2 rounds of that same alternating 5 and 4 pattern from the riff, with these huge rhythm stops that make it really easy to lose track if you're not actively counting along. These aren't in the film version. It's kind of a shame because I think they really create this sense of confusion that feels like getting chased by a slasher who could be hiding anywhere, but they're also really guitar forward in a way that I think would probably feel out of place with the rest of this recording. And the way that it charges clean through does create this feeling of relentlessness that evokes something similar to the Carpenter theme. So from there we get 4 repetitions of that pattern from the riff, a bar of 5 followed by a bar of 4. Then we get 4 bars of 5 with a much more freeform feel. We don't get any of those long beats that help establish a groove. I, for one, will completely lose the downbeat in this phrase every time unless I am actively counting to 5. And then we go back into that long, short 5 for 3 bars. That's important because in Western music, it's pretty unusual to see phrase groupings that aren't divisible by 4, or at the very least by 2. If your ear is attuned to this musical tradition, a 3-bar phrase is generally going to feel rushed, like something got skipped. In the album version, this next phrase is where Forge's vocals come back in. But in the film version, there's not really a clear dividing line. The drums switch up a little bit, but since the previous phrase doesn't last quite as long as it feels like it should, it takes a second to realize what's going on, which is that we move back into 4. That really normal, short kind of 4, like way back at the beginning of the verse. But because we've just been so all over the place rhythmically, it doesn't quite feel like a return to normalcy. And the way this song doubles down and makes sure of that is really cool. The phrase before this really stabilizes by putting a huge emphasis on the last 2 beats of each measure. You'll remember that I talked about that same kind of emphasis in the vocal lead-in to the chorus on the word hunters, where it eases the transition from 4 into 5.
It's a hunter's mood.
But here, in a transition that theoretically should be smoother because we're moving from weird back to normal, we go a whole bar without that emphasis, leaving us completely out at sea. Personally, for the first several times I listened to this where I was actively trying to count it out, I was counting to 5 here, only to find out in what I thought was the middle of the second bar that I was completely off. The whole magic of this song is that it repeatedly pulls off this feat where it uses that 5/4 time signature that feels kind of weird if you're used to hearing this kind of music, that is the representation of spook in the Halloween movies as a whole, in such a way that it makes 4/4, the most common and normal feel in this entire musical tradition, seem like the weird part. It takes what is typically grounding and makes it destabilizing. So if we say that that original John Carpenter Halloween theme, and particularly its 5/4 time signature, that long, short rhythmic pattern, that's Michael Myers, right? That's the spooky making its way into the cozy suburbs, into the place where you were meant to feel safe. But the way Ghost plays with that here, the way they use it to make 4/4 feel weird and wrong, that's Laurie Strode, and specifically the Laurie Strode of the late 2010s and 2020s with her gray hair and her bunker in the woods, just waiting for everything to go belly up again. That's her daughter Karen and her granddaughter Allison. That's the whole town of Haddonfield. It's anyone who's ever come into contact with Michael Myers and will spend the rest of their life looking over their shoulder, trying to see if he's somehow back. It's the feeling that nothing will ever be safe again. So the thing about music is, I can break this thing down into its pieces and explain each of them one by one all day, but there's only so much you can really get from any of these bits out of context. To actually understand how it all works, to really feel what's going on here, you've got to put it all together and see for yourself. But unfortunately, the way YouTube's copyright system is set up makes it really hard for me to do that. It's made this whole video pretty tough, actually. It's taken a lot of futzing to make this into something I'd be able to post and get paid for on this platform, but this last bit is just beyond what I'm going to be able to make happen in the way I want to make it happen, with a number and size of headaches I personally can handle without exploding. But thankfully for me and you, that doesn't mean that this final demonstration can't exist. It just means that it only exists thanks to this video's sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is a subscription streaming service that actually values the independent creators who put our videos on their platform, not least by respecting our right to fair use of copyrighted work instead of prioritizing relationships with big movie studios and record labels the way YouTube does. If you were watching this video on Nebula, you'd be watching a cut that is just way better because I was able to play the amounts of music that fully demonstrate my point instead of the amounts that a robot wouldn't notice. And also the word that I cut out of this version because I was terrified that I'd spend all this time fighting copyright claims only to get demonetized for being slightly spicy for literally 5 seconds. If you sign up now, you can find just the last bit of this video that's going to really suck here on YouTube, the way it's supposed to be, as its own bonus clip on Nebula. You can also watch a bunch of other fantastic, independently created video that wouldn't make sense on YouTube, like Maggie Mae Fish's series Unrated that discusses portrayals of sex on film and absolutely would get booted off this platform, and a pro shot of Abigail Thorne's play The Prince. And now a Nebula subscription also includes access to Nebula classes, like Polyphonics class on how to listen to music like a musician. And you can find the entire catalogs of creators like me, a lot of the time posted earlier than on YouTube and with special bonus content, with no ads or sponsor reads ever. When you sign up using my link in the description or by going to nebula.tv/Laura Crone, you can get an annual subscription at a 40% discount for a total of $30 for the whole year, which is just $250 a month. And you'll actually be directly supporting me as well. A portion of every sign up through that link goes directly to me. So with all that out of the way, I figured I'd invite an old friend to help us see how this all works together in context. Just know that I have done my best.
Potresti chiamarmi Mama Emeritus. Tonight, it's a hunter's moon. Though my memories are faded, they come back to haunt me once again. Though my mind is somewhat jaded now, it's time for me to strike again.